Luke chapter 12, verse 17. He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." The Lord told us how to love God with all our heart or wholeheartedly, with all our soul or our entire soul, with all our strength or our entire strength, with all our mind or our whole mind. We could summarize by saying, give all you have of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Our focus is going to be on our minds. Our minds are linked to thinking. We think with our minds. The body organ that comes into play with thinking is the brain. That is where we tend to think of as the place where the mind resides. But in this verse, the mind is more than a body organ, just as a heart is more than the body organ. Although the mind and thinking are not synonymous, I can't imagine thinking without the mind being the source or means for thinking. I also can't imagine what else the mind would be doing besides thinking. Perhaps the mind could be thought of as the place where knowledge is stored. But this is getting too technical for me and my purposes here. I'm going to indulge in some thinking about the 2 commandments that Jesus gave and invite you to not only join me in thinking, but also to partake in your own thinking about my thinking. The fancy word for thinking about thinking is metacognition. Notice how and what I am thinking. Did you get that? Here goes. A commandment is not a suggestion. The one giving the commandment expects the one receiving the commandment to obey the commandment by doing it. Failure to obey the commandment is disobedience. In these commandments, the Lord gives the what, the how, and the when. When we are processing information, our thinking pattern often involves generating questions to be answered to gain understanding. God tells us that the what, or subject of the commandments, is love for God and others. The how is answered for the first commandment, loving God, with the phrase, with all of. The Lord names heart, soul, mind, and strength. Essentially, we are to love intensely with all our being. For the second commandment, the how is answered with to love neighbors as you love yourself. The implication is that it is natural for people to love themselves and seek good for themselves and avoid harm to themselves. What about the question of when? Follow my logic. I think there is an implied answer of always. Here's my thinking. If in obedience to the first commandment you are loving with all of, the inclusiveness of all and the exclusiveness of all means loving is happening all the time because there's no time available to not be loving God. Likewise, in the second commandment, there is no provision for a time to not be loving others. Simply not loving others is not an option, so we must always be loving others.